6 years following the end of the conflict, where does the country stand today? Have we achieved satisfactory levels in terms of reconstruction, resettlement, reconciliation and accountability? Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our guests this evening are MP Sumandaran, representing the Tamil National Lands, DM Swaminathan, Minister of Reconstruction, Resettlement and Hindu Affairs. Let me introduce our journalists this evening. On to my right is Nabil Majid, on to my immediate left is Sonali Wanakabaduge, and on to my far left is Faraz Shaukat Ali, an independent business investigative journalist. We start off with Parliamentarian MP Sumandaran, representing the Tamil National Lands. Are you satisfied with the progress made so far in terms of the war, 6 years following the end of the conflict? Are you satisfied the way Sri Lanka has progressed? The time starts now, 4 minutes.
No, not satisfied at all. As you say, 6 years since the end of the armed conflict. The conflict is much longer than that. The armed conflict has been, say, 26 to 30 years or so. But the conflict itself, which gave rise to an armed struggle, is of a much longer duration and is essentially one that is political in nature. Once the armed conflict came to an end, there was an expectation that the real conflict issues will be dealt with, will be addressed. Unfortunately, that has not happened until now. That hasn't happened because in the long period of the armed struggle, the narrative of the governments, successive governments, was that the issue was one of terrorism, and that that had to be put down, and the underlying issues did not surface except during President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga's time, when those issues were sought to be addressed. Subsequent to her term in office, and particularly during Mahinda Rajapaksa's regime, the story as the government told it was that the only problem that faced the country was one of terrorism, and that had to be conquered. And there are other issues as well. During the end stages of the armed conflict, there were concerns raised with regard to the way in which the war, as they called it, was being prosecuted. Our take is that the war was prosecuted in such a way not only to defeat the LTTE, but also make it plain to the Tamils of this country that their demand for political autonomy wouldn't be tolerated anymore, and this is the way that would be suppressed. And so it was with scant regard for civilian life and safety that the war was prosecuted. So much so that it raised international concern, and on the 26th of May 2009, just a week after the armed conflict came to an end, the General Secretary of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon himself, was in Sri Lanka and signed a joint communique with the then President, in which Sri Lanka undertook to do three things. One, resettle all the people who had been displaced due to the war before the end of December 2009. Two, investigate the allegations of serious violations of human rights and international laws. And three, resolve the root causes and find a political solution to the conflict which has come to be known as the ethnic conflict. 6 years from then, we are still at the same point. None of those three commitments have been met by Sri Lanka as to date.
Thank you very much. That, of course, was M.S. Mandiran representing the Tamil National Alliance. Minister Swaminathan, allegations were levelled by Parliamentary Mandiran against the previous regime with regard to reconciliation and accountability issues following the end of the conflict, and even during the final months of the conflict as well. What steps have your government taken since the 8th of January to rectify these problems?
Our government is well aware of what had happened in the last regime, especially post-war. There were many issues that were raised. Mr. Sumandran touched upon it, and it is internationally known. But as far as our government is concerned, we have considered a domestic inquiry to investigate the root causes of the war and the subsequent mishaps that have been arisen from the war. So that means we are allowing a domestic inquiry to be held. Secondly, as far as resettlement is concerned, our Prime Minister and the President of Sri Lanka has appointed me as a resettlement and reconstruction minister, and there has been a fair amount of support given by the government from the President, His Excellency the President, and also with the Honorable Prime Minister, to see in what way the resettlement can take place. Now, within the period of 100 days, we were fortunate in resettling, at least getting the lands back, 1,000 acres of land in the Valigamam North and Valigamam East. And today, His Excellency the President has signed the revocation papers of the Gazette notification which gave the rights to the BOI in respect of the Sampur land. And there again, there is about 808 acres of land which probably will be given back to the landowners. Another 274 acres of land which has been owned by the Navy has been negotiated with the Navy, and the Navy officials and the commander has agreed that they will relocate themselves, and that 274 acres of land also will be given to the person who owned the land. So therefore we have got about 808 acres plus another 274 acres. And ultimately, when both this land, as far as the Navy is concerned, it may take a few months to get it relocated because they have to physically move out of the premises. We are trying to negotiate as soon as possible how we can do that. But as far as the other Sampur, the land but the BOI owned, is in a position, we are in a position to hand it over to the respective landowners probably in about 10 to 2 weeks, because there again we have to get the land commissioner's signature and there are some formalities to go gone through. But but as far as the land is concerned, we have been very successful in obtaining the land so far within the short period of time. In the other way, we have also considered, and we are considering with the Defense Secretary and the Land Commissioner and the Land Secretary and our ministry, to see whether we are in a position to obtain further land that has been unutilized by the military and the Navy as well as the Army, whether we can obtain those lands and give it back to the true and lawful owners. That is as far as resettlement is concerned. There are many other issues which I will probably touch upon, because even though we resettle these people, there are so many humanitarian grounds that we have to think of: housing problem, the sanitation problem, the water problem. Then there are so many issues as far as their vocation is concerned. We just resettle a person, they will want to say next day in the morning, how are they going to live for the day? So there are so many factors to be considered, and all those issues have been looked into by our ministry, and with the cooperation of the United Nations and their respective organization, they have been very, very cooperative as far as our ministry is concerned to bring in a good or a reasonable resettlement program.
Thank you very much. That, of course, was Minister D.M. Swaminathan, Minister of Reconstruction, Resettlement and Hindu Affairs. Now, just a reminder to our viewers, you could also pose questions to MP Sumandran and also Minister D.M. Swaminathan. Just join our Facebook page, Face the Nation on MTV Sports, and we would love to take in your questions and pose it to the Minister and the parliamentarian representing the Tamil National Alliance respectively. So let's start the Q&A from Sonali today. Yes, Sonali?
Thank you, Shamir. Well, my first question is for you, parliamentarian. You said there was a suppression for the cause for political autonomy. Now, this is a very broad statement. In light of measures that have already been initiated to enable reconciliation and reconstruction, could you outline for us what more are you talking of?
Well, the root causes have to be looked at. The root cause of the conflict is one of majoritarianism. The country attained independence in 1947 or 48, and one of the first pieces of legislation that was passed deprived a section of the citizenry of their very citizenship using the majority vote in parliament. So that is the root cause of the conflict, which later manifested in several different ways, of one language being preferred over the other, and so on and so forth. Discrimination in the fields of education, in employment, education, tertiary education, when Tamil students were kept out through standardization, was when they came into the picture, which until then was mostly a political hierarchy issue, and the youth came into the picture and took up arms. So that issue has not been resolved by defeating the LTTE. LTTE was a manifestation of a larger issue, and what I said was that the way in which LTTE was defeated, particularly in the last phase of the war, was such that the root causes also should be suppressed, that nobody should voice or bring to the fore the actual conflict, because if you look at the history, whenever the Tamil people raised these political issues, they were roundly beaten. Violence was practiced on them in 1958.
With respect, we're in 2015 now.
Yes.
And you are speaking of political autonomy.
Yes.
This is a democratic state with the sovereignty that vests in the people, and there's a territorial integrity that is respected. So in that framework, how do you propose to get this political autonomy?
Well, democracy doesn't mean a simple rule of the majority. That will then be absolutely tyranny. So when there are different peoples inhabiting the country, there must be measures put in place to ensure that one does not oppress the other merely because democracy is one feature is majority rule. So we have to have a arrangement in which there is power sharing worked out, and one of those ways is to share powers with the regions, so that people who are in the minority in numbers in the whole country may be constituting a majority in certain regions. So at least in those areas, if some measure of governmental power is given, they can exercise it in the manner in which they like to exercise it. So these are the power sharing arrangements that I am talking about. In 1987, a particular scheme was brought into operation precisely for this reason, but that largely remains not implemented. Most important features of that amendment are not implemented. Moreover, it's accepted by everyone concerned that it doesn't provide a meaningful scheme of devolution, and that is why ever since it was enacted, successive governments under successive presidents have tried to work out a way of improving on that. 1993 under President Premadasa, under Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, several efforts, and even under President Rajapaksa, an APRC and an expert committee all of that he appointed.
Honourable Sumandran,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there appears to be a growing sentiment among the general public that the TNA have become the perpetual accusers. There are always allegations that are being levelled by the TNA, but there are very rarely solutions being brought to the table. For example, let's take the last presidential election. The Tamil National Alliance played a major role, especially in the north and east, in bringing President Sirisena into power and this government into power. Now, since being brought into power, as Minister Swaminathan said, they've made some progress, especially in the areas of resettlement and giving lands back to their original owners. Why has the TNA not joined this government in the form of, for example, a cabinet portfolio? Is it because it's difficult to govern and it's a lot easier or comfortable to accuse and stay in opposition?
No, I wouldn't agree with you that we are perpetual accusers. When President Mahinda Rajapaksa had talks with us in the year 2011 from January to December, we were the ones who proposed a solution. First round of talks, second round of talks, third round of talks, we presented papers for solution. There was no reply that came after 5 months and 7 rounds of talks, and then we had to leave the table, then rejoin it again, even without a reply from the government. So we have always proposed a solution.
But what is that solution? What is the solution?
The whole country knows what we proposed from 2011. What we kept on the table is public knowledge.
The implementation of the 13th Amendment.
Well, the implementation of the 13th Amendment and going beyond that to achieve meaningful devolution is a phrase that the Mahinda Rajapaksa government has constantly used in joint statements with India and various other people. We have accepted that.
What do you
but
mean
it has never been put into use.
I think
so it is wrong to say
the question
that we are
would be,
accusing. Our accusation is that government has been paying lip service to the full implementation of the 13th Amendment and going beyond.
And Mr. Madhavan, what is the position now? What is the position now?
Well, the position now, I do acknowledge that there is a movement forward. And that is why we supported President Maithripala Sirisena at the election. We are continuing to support. We supported the 19th Amendment very meaningfully. We work with Minister Swaminathan and his ministry in getting the people resettled. We are constructively working. We don't have to be in the cabinet to achieve all of these things. Cabinet portfolios are sought after by people who run after positions and executive power. We don't need that. We represent the people, and to that extent...
But Mr. Sumandran, that is exactly what you're asking for. You're asking for executive powers in these areas so that you can govern those areas.
That's right.
But you don't want to accept a cabinet ministerial position which will allow you some power in governing those areas.
All right, let me tell you what we told the President soon after he assumed office. We were offered cabinet portfolio, and the President said, I have invited you, why aren't you joining my cabinet? And our party leader told him, we are not rejecting your offer. We are not rejecting your offer, but we are not joining you now. We want to see if you are going in the right direction. And if you do go in the right direction, in time we will reconsider our position.
Minister Swaminathan, are you all moving in the right direction? For example, do you see a meaningful implementation of the 13th Amendment under your government?
Yes, as far as our government is concerned, we are very meaningful to see that the 13th Amendment and the provincial council system is properly functioning. So there has been an election, there has been a chief minister, and there was, at that time they said we don't want the military governors. Then we have changed that into a civil governor, and we are very happy with the present governor at the moment, Mr. Palyakara. And he is the governor in the northern province, and even the eastern province we have got Mr. Austin Fernando, who is also a senior civil servant. And
Minister, is your party for the full implementation of the 13th Amendment, including, will you give them police powers as well?
Yeah, that question has to be looked into at the correct stage. As far as police powers are concerned, there has been There is the police commission, and according to our independence of the police commission, there has to be a DIG of the area, and then it has to be not decided. We have not decided whether we are going to give the full implementation of the police power. But at the moment there is. I mean, there is nothing. There is an area. The police is functioning very well. If there is no interruption by the state or by the government, as far as the police's activities are concerned, then there is whether we are giving full powers under the police or whether we are retaining, that is not the issue. The issue is the police should have the independence to continue their duties in accordance with their rights. That is basically what we want, the Independence Police Commission. So if there is no interference by the state government with the police, then whether we are getting the full right to implement or half right to implement, I feel is not going to be very pertinent.
So what do you say, Mr. Sumandiran, about police powers?
Well, as I said, President Mahinda Rajapaksa himself offered full implementation of the 13th Amendment and going beyond that to achieve meaningful devolution. I take it that when he says full implementation of the police powers that are in the 13th Amendment is what he means with regard to the police powers. No derogation from that. So I fail to understand why the UNP, which enacted the 13th Amendment in the first place, and President Mahinda Rajapaksa's UPFA having constantly assured the full implementation, when, as you rightly asked the question, they would pay lip service to full implementation, but the moment you ask police powers, they say no, not police powers. Mahinda Rajapaksa said 13 plus. Then he said 13 plus plus. But when he was asked police powers, he said no, not police powers. I fail to understand how this arithmetic works.
Mr. Swaminathan,
that's okay. Yeah. I'll just reply the question. With due respect to Sumandiran, the question arises here. During the former regime, there was complete interruption of the police powers by the executive. They were not in a position to run their proper, the police was not in a position, even as far as police is concerned or in many other fields, like even the judiciary and public service, the judicial system, because as far as judicial system is concerned, the judges were appointed by the
President Rajapaksa only came into power in 2005. So are you saying that all these independent commissions only deteriorated under him?
Yeah, because there was no independence commission, there was no independent police commission, there was no independent public service commission, there was no independence of the judicial service commission.
Well, he's out of office now, so you've got a new president.
Yeah, that's what we have brought.
So what about
the police powers? The 19th Amendment has been brought in. We have brought in the Constitutional Council. We have brought in the new commissions that are going to be appointed.
But you've forgotten all about the 13th Amendment and the full implementation of the 13th.
The full implementation of the 13th Amendment in concurrence with the 19th Amendment will give the full powers virtually to every provincial council.
When you mean virtually, what you mean is without the police powers?
No, with the police powers, because that's what I was exactly trying to say. Whether you are going to give full police powers or not, if the police can implement their duties and if the DIG from that area can carry out his duties in accordance with the law of abiding law citizens, then the full powers have been given.
Mr. Swaminathan, my question though is this. Now, our country, we're infamous for constitutional amendments. In the past 4 decades, we've had now 19 amendments. We are still to implement an amendment that was passed 3 decades ago. How successful will we be in implementing the 19th Amendment? Considering the fact that even the 17th Amendment, which was a hodgepodge affair, was never really implemented in its spirit.
No, 19th Amendment has already been passed. The question of now
the implementation.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. The Constitutional Council will be appointed, which is going to be done before the end of this month, end of June. Once the Constitutional Council is appointed, then the Constitutional Council's appointment with the concurrence of the President will appoint the relevant commissions. There's a police commission, etc. And they will continue to carry on their duties without any interference.
But on the subject of the Constitutional Council, well, the Constitutional Council that has now been approved through the 19th Amendment is not what was initially promised.
Yeah, probably. So that has been done with concurrence of the opposition. I mean, there was no other alternative because we didn't want to get out of that.
Mr. Swaminathan, a quick question.
At least there are two pluralistic point of view, two from outsiders, and others are going to be the members of Parliament, the President, the leader of the opposition, the Prime Minister, and the Speaker. So at least there is a Constitutional Council.
Minister Swaminathan, a quick question. During his address to Parliament, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, I think even MP Sumanthiran was present in Parliament when he made the address. He said that the country should go beyond the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. What was he referring to, saying going beyond the 13th Amendment?
That's exactly what I am trying to convince you. Whether we are going to talk about 13th Amendment or more, what we have to do is, if this correct implementation of these commissions are being done, then whether we are going to 13A or 13 plus is being done. So if we can really enforce this position clearly in the society, then we are not really bothered with the full implementation of 13th Amendment, or whether if proper justice and police powers have been given to the police commission and to the police officers to carry on their duties, then what I personally feel, we have fulfilled our obligation.
6 years following the end of the conflict, where does the country stand today? We're going for a short commercial break and we will be right back. This is Face the Nation. Welcome back. A very good evening to you. This is Face the Nation. Minister, the time starts now with regard to the second round. You have 3 minutes each, Parliamentary Sumanthiran as well. Starting off, I have a question for you. You said Sri Lanka is moving in the right direction. We are now moving towards extremely strong international relations in your opening remarks. However, MP Sumanthiran made a very interesting remark. He said that following the end of the conflict, how things unfolded during the final stage of the conflict was not right. And there might be some sort of problems with regard to the mentalities of those living in the north and east. What steps have you all taken with regard to this? It's a very interesting remark. Does that mean there is a resurgence of the LTTE once again in the country? And the second question is, where does your ministry find the funds? One of the allegations leveled at your ministry is the fact that reconstruction has stalled in the north and east since 8th of January. The 3 minutes starts now.
As far as resurgency of the LTT is concerned, I think that is not a favorable question to be asked, because as far as the LTT is concerned, it's an organization which has been now, brought to books, and they are no more as far as the document, as far as they are concerned. But the question is, as far as the Tamils of the northern province are concerned, as Mr. Sumanthiran very clearly said, there has been certain issues as far as the conflict is concerned. Now, as far as our government is concerned, even today our foreign minister has very clearly stated that there should be a domestic inquiry to consider whether there has been any unwanted and unruly amount of people killed in the last stages of the war. And if the proper domestic inquiry is being held, it can be solved to a great extent, that the people of the country of the northern province can be satisfied to a certain extent. So that is the way that I am thinking of. That is the way that we have to look into. The second thing is, as far as, what was the second question?
With regard to...
reconstruction, You say reconstruction has completely come to a standstill. I do totally disagree with you, because as far as, first of all, to do the reconstruction, we do the resettlement. Without the lands, you can't reconstruct. I don't know why you came to that conclusion saying that the reconstruction...
This is an allegation leveled by the people in the north and east.
No, I don't know. Not to my level. But I've been a minister so long, for the last 2 months or 3 months. But there is nothing to that extent. First of all, we have to get the lands cleared out. We are giving the lands. In the same way, I am in close contact with the United Nations organizations. In fact, I've even met them today in the morning. And we are having, as far as the land resettlement is concerned, there is going to be, for each resettled family, for each of the family, there is going to be 130,000 rupees worth of products to build a temporary house. That is, you can build with 130,000 rupees, you can build a nice temporary house, which can be be used for about 10 years. And UNHCR has come forward to give those houses. Then, as far as the World Food Program is concerned, they have come back and said that they are going to give dry rations for a period of 1.5 months. Then also the ministry, as far as we are concerned, we are giving, as soon as the resettlement program has started for each family, when they go in, we are giving 13,000 rupees plus another 25,000 rupees, and we have kept about 20 million rupees for reclaiming and for clearing the jungles and many issues of that way. So don't say that there is no reconstruction. To reconstruct, we have to first settle it. Once the settlement is done, then we have to go through as far as the reconstruction is concerned.
Where do you find the funds to do this?
The funds probably will be giving, the government will give us funds, then the United Nations organization will give the funds. There can be foreign donors who are coming the front. There can be even the so-called diaspora or even foreign investors can come in. The funds can come in.
Is there an allocation right now?
Pardon?
Is there an allocation made by the government right now?
No, there is no allocation at all.
Financial
allocation.
Allocation, there is a financial allocation that is sufficient for the temporary period that we are going through. Once a new budget comes in, and if we have a new election and if we go through a new budget, then we'll get the proper allocation in accordance with what our necessity is. Once a necessity is given, even the UN organizations have said that they will reconsider and give us the favorable assistance as far as the reconstruction is concerned. So even there is so many points that have been raised even by our Prime Minister. We want to make a Jaffna area, because especially the Trincomalee area, as an economic zone, and there are so many other way of reconstruction which we want to do as far as the airport is concerned, the port is concerned. So there are a lot of views, because our Prime Minister is very keen that we should make this as a hub, in the same way as far as like the south.
Thank you very much.
So the entire country will be benefited. The north and the east and the south will all get together, and there can be a good united nation.
Thank you very much, Minister. Parliamentary Sumanthiran, you represent the people in the north and east. It's nearly 4 months since this government took office, since the 8th of January. Today is the 8th of May. Are you satisfied with the reconstruction that is taking place right now in the north and east, or do you believe that there needs to be more accelerated effort taken by the government to address the grievances of the Tamil-speaking people? That's question one. Question two is, you said that you were dissatisfied with the way in which the former government acted. I want to ask you, what do you want this government to do? Are you satisfied with the last 4 months?
All right, let me put it this way. We hoped for more, but we find that doing a reality check, the government is doing as much as it can, and I must commend Mr. Swaminathan, particularly from the Resettlement Ministry. They are doing all that they can to quickly resettle the people. The problem, though, is that the lands are not being released. It's being released in bits and pieces here and there. Sampur was big yesterday, so that's a big plus. But it has taken long. We thought within a month or two the lands would be released, because that was an election promise. It hasn't happened. Now we understand. The military, it was only the President and the Prime Minister who changed. The military command did not change. Those who occupied the land have got used to cultivating other people's lands and selling the products, running hotels and playing golf there. So it's a little difficult for them to change their lifestyles, and it's taking a little more time. But as to the intentions of the government, we are quite satisfied that the government intends to do this. Even with regard to political reconciliation, now the word reconciliation was used, the government very clearly said that in the first 100 days the constitution is not going to be changed fully. And if you listen to the speeches on the 19th Amendment, the Prime Minister very clearly said after the elections there will be a new constitution. The Parliament will become a constituent assembly, and a new constitution will be drafted for a period of 1 to 2 years. The Foreign Minister said that very clearly, and also said it is then that the ethnic issue will be addressed in that new constitution. So that is our understanding as well. And even in the committee stage, when several committee stage amendment was being discussed, the Justice Minister also repeatedly said, this is only halfway. We will go in for a brand new constitution in the next government. That is our understanding, and we are quite prepared to wait until that time, so that it's not the 13th Amendment, it is not the structure of the constitution, so that in a democratic setup, we will discuss with all the stakeholders in the country and arrive at a constitution that will be acceptable by all the peoples of this country. And we think the movement since 8th of January until today, 8th of May, has been in that direction of accommodating everybody's aspirations, and within a period of 5 months, I think a great deal has been achieved in terms of changing the mood of the country.
End of January, Foreign Minister Mangal Samaraveera promised the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights, as Minister Swaminathan pointed out, that a domestic inquiry will be launched. Positive engagement so far? Have you seen this document?
No, we have not seen anything. In fact, one of our complaints is that we are not being consulted as representatives of the victim community, as it were. We should be consulted. We have so far not been consulted. That's a serious lapse on the part of the government. And I think the government will have to one day contend with the fact that the domestic process will not be acceptable by us.
What's happening to the domestic inquiry, Minister Swaminathan?
The domestic inquiry is supposed to start very soon. I think the machinery has been set up. For
3 months more, 3 months.
We know nothing of it.
We don't know very much about it.
We have not been consulted.
Because as far as that was being
You are
done,
representing the government.
Yeah,
even you are not aware of it,
but I'm not getting involved with certain issues. There are certain issues are looked after directly by the Prime Minister and His Excellency the President. So this probably comes within their purview, and it may not be correct for me to comment on it now.
Okay, I open the questions for the journalists.
Thank you. Minister Swaminathan, I'll ask this question. It will maybe not directly under your purview, but I'm sure it will matter to you as well. You were talking about liaising with the United Nations, with the WFP and other international aid agencies to rebuild and reconstruct the North and East province. I'm sure you know the history of the conflict in our country brewed or stemmed from this whole notion of favoritism in the treatment of the different communities. Aren't you fearful that when all of this is being done in the North and East, that for example, let's say the Monoragala district, which according to the Department of Census and Statistics is the poorest district in Sri Lanka, aren't you fearful that when all of this is being done in the North and East, if similar attention is not paid to the South as well, that it will be a bone of contention and could foster future conflict?
Certainly, I totally agree with you. That's what I mentioned that if you are going to make Trincomalee as an economic zone, the same way you have to consider the southern area also. It has to be done simultaneously. I made it also clear to you that the north, east, south and the west all have to be developed together as one nation, and then only we can get our aspirations as far as Tamils, Sinhalese and the Muslims or the Burghers and whatever religions there may be, we can live together as brothers and sisters.
Given that several development projects in the south have been halted because they are under review, do you think that the government is not acting fast enough?
The question here is, the earlier government was ruling for 10 years. They have done the development program. We can't within 3 months come and say whether that is in order. There are so many payments that have to be settled. There are so many issues that have been looked into, whether they have given the tenders in accordance with the law, rule of law. So those will all have to be considered. But even subject to all that, our cabinet has decided a few weeks ago that certain immediate reconstruction programs like roads, which have to be looked into immediately, are going to commence straight away.
Sonal?
Yes, my next question is also to you, Mr. Minister. President Sirisena in his Independence Day address said he would, and I quote, unite the hearts of the people of the North and South through a national reconciliation process for coexistence. Now, this statement, it goes beyond resettling and reconstructing. How has your ministry and in effect the government gone about this process or initiated this process of reaching out, of healing the hearts and minds of the
That's
people?
right. Now, even as far as my resettlement is concerned, I'm not only concentrating as resettlement of the Tamils. If the Sinhalese or the Muslims have lost their lands, whoever has lost their lands, we are in a position to give the lands back to the people who have lost their lands, and that is part of my job. We are not trying to look at it from a very narrow point of view, but the majority of the Tamil people, certainly we'll have to look after them. They are the people who have been suffering for the last 40 years after with this war. So the majority of the people's concern has to be looked into. In the same way, the minority people, the Muslims who have lost their land, the Sinhalese who have lost their land in Badiklo, there are a number of issues that have come in. If they can prove the identity of the lands, and if the lands are not being utilized directly by the armed forces for security reasons, and if the army is in a position to release them, we certainly release and give them. That is how we have to coordinate ourselves. We have to work together with all community at large.
Right, but if we go beyond giving back the lands to the people, what if we were to look at healing the hearts and minds of a wounded citizenry? What are the measures that your ministry has taken?
No, the healing of the hearts, I must see what the healing is, what is the illness that is suffering from.
A conflict-stricken people.
Conflict-stricken
Mr.
people,
Sumanthiran,
that's okay, that is in the north. But the southern area is not conflict-stricken people.
Absolutely. About the people in the north and east, how has your ministry, or what measures has your ministry taken?
Quite right. So as far as the north and east is concerned, if you can economically give a viable situation where the people of the north and east can live in an economically progressive environment, if that can be given, the people's mind will be resealed in one. Education facilities will have to be given, the schooling has to be given, universities have to be provided, the hospitals have to be provided, the roads have to be provided, and as far as they are concerned, farming, there are a few major issues like the farming, the fishing of the areas have to be given. Today the farmers are, as Mr. Sumanthiran very clearly said, have been deprived by the army because they are having their own farming, they are selling their own goods, by depriving the farmers of the northern province from selling their items because they have to sell it at a higher price. The army has got all the facilities, they are selling it at a lower price.
Let me...
Yes, you can interrupt, Minister.
I would disagree. I mean, I'll agree with him on the issues that he identified, but that scratches the surface. The other day, a lady was offered 500,000 as compensation for the son who went missing after being handed over by her to the security forces. You know her response? She said, I will give you 500,000, will you bring my son back? It's not economy. You see, the question that you asked about hearts and minds, there are, even before the commission appointed by the government on disappearances, more than 20,000 complaints of disappearances, most of them by relatives who handed them over to security forces and can't be found. That's a very serious issue. You can't just talk in terms of reconciliation, building a house, go back, payment of money. That without truth being ascertained, there can't be any.
That's right. My question, I'd like to.
I agree with him totally. I agree with him totally, but I didn't touch upon that yet. I have not touched upon that subject yet. As far as the Paranagama Commission is concerned, there has been, as the Honorable Sumanthiran very clearly said, there has to be more than 15 to 18,000 complaints made. At the moment, within the last 1.5 years, the Paranagama Commission has only heard about 1,500 complaints. There are people who have lost. There are people who are weeping. Their families are suffering. I have not touched upon that. I think I totally agree with him. These are issues that has to be looked into very urgently, which the Ministry of Justice is looking into the matter. We are looking at the people who have been in custody for so many years. Some are in custody for more than 20 to 25 years. Not even a charge sheet has been given, and they have to be released. And even the President is well aware of that. The Prime Minister is well aware of it. And I think our Justice Minister, as well as so many other institutions, are looking into the matter. And as far as the missing people are concerned, it's a very serious problem. This is not an issue that has been brought forward by this government. It is a legacy that we have received, and we are trying to our best to see how we can eradicate that situation. As we get 500,000 rupees not going to serve. We want the life of a child. We want the life of our own son. That people are weeping. I totally agree with you. But the question remains, we are looking into that matter in a more humanitarian way, and I hope that we will be successful.
We have a question from one of our Facebook fans. MP Subandran, because he was talking about those of missing persons, the minister. The government, according to media reports, has requested the TNA to submit a list of persons in detention to initiate their release. Is such a list available with the TNA?
How can the TNA give a list of detainees when all that is available with the government? You see, 3 years ago...
there's a new government in place.
Well, 3 years ago, the previous government facilitated a process by which I went to every prison and I prepared a list. So we did have a list. But we had to update that, and recently, in consultation with the Solicitor General and a team that was appointed, we have agreed on the figures, and the Minister of Justice himself has done his own survey, and it's about 723 or so.
Have this document been given to the government?
Well, yes, I gave it to the Attorney General's department, and it coincides almost, 725 is my number, and 723 is the Minister of Justice. I think we've agreed that that's accurate.
Another question, Minister, another question, a quick one. The TNA said that they cannot work with a military governor. However, now there is a civilian governor. Your comments on the appointment of Mr. Palihakara as a governor of the Northern Province, replacing the military governor. What has the TNA done so far in the North?
We welcome the appointment of Mr. Palihakara and Mr. Austin Fernando for the East. Both governors have been very constructive in their approach and in their dealings with the elected provincial council. And the TNA majority council in the North, and in the East also, we are now part of the administration. Two ministers are from the TNA. They are working very well with the two governors. So I don't understand the question, what have we done? We are working well with the two governors.
I have
Questions
a
again?
question,
Yeah.
Shamir. Minister Swaminathan, this question is for you. I believe it comes under the subject of resettlement. This is to do with the alleged resettlement of or unauthorized settlement in Wilpattu, in the northern sanctuary of Wilpattu. Minister Rishad Badiuddin convened a media briefing yesterday. He maintains that this is not a sanctuary. However, we've seen a lot of environmental groups that are saying that this settlement has been placed there by clearing out a sanctuary, a forest conservation sanctuary. Now this is becoming an issue. There are elements which are attempting to use this issue to their advantage. Don't you think this should be nipped in the bud? Have you, as the Minister of Resettlement, had any discussions with
I have
the
not
Wildlife
had
Minister?
any discussion at all with Mr. Rishad Badiuddin. If it has been done, if the Wilpattu, the sanctuary has been destroyed, and if it has been given to the public at large, it's a very serious matter of concern. So we have to study that issue. I can't make any comments here openly. If that is correct, and if the factually what you say is correct, then we have to see what the recourse has to be.
But this is an issue that it's not new, it's not recent. I think it's been prevalent since about last year. Has your government
more than that?
Yeah,
has your government taken?
Well, I have a comment to make on that. You see, sanctuaries are important, but the lives of people are more important. So resettling those people have been taken either to the edge of the sanctuary or within the sanctuary. We need to check on that. But why has that happened in the first place? Because they are unable to go to the place where they originally lived. I think that is more of a serious issue than what the environmentalists are shouting about.
Well, what have you done, Mr. Swaminathan, about the people who were displaced from Mana, the Muslims who were given 24 hours, and they all have this camp somewhere outside Putlam? They've been there for about 30
There
years.
again, we are negotiating with the Navy. So the Navy is occupying the major portion of the lands. The question here remains, the Army and the Navy are in possession of the major lands. Now even the police, for instance, the police station, Jaffna police station, has been taken by being supposed to be gazetted, and it is being going to be acquired by the police department, which is very. In fact, I just wrote a letter to His Excellency to the Honourable Prime Minister today. So there are so many issues of this nature.
Now,
as far as Mannar is concerned,
pardon? They continue to live in huts. The last
I agree
30
with
years.
you totally, but the question is,
in that case, they might as well go and live in the Wilpattu camp.
No. That's another issue. I totally agree with you. They are all suffering. If you look
It's
at
3
even the
generations.
all the people who are living in the camps are suffering. It's well aware. We are well aware of the situation. But the question here remains: these are occupied by the armed forces. This is not a thing that I can do it within 2 months or 3 months. We are negotiating with the army.
How long will it take,
No,
Minister?
we are negotiating with the Navy. They have been very cooperative so far. I can't hit against the I can't hit my
So
head
we
against
did
the
have
rock.
a discussion in Parliament with the Prime Minister and Armed Forces commanders.
They've
And
been very-
Silabatura in Mana was one of those issues that
that
were
have been
raised
raised.
because Navy is occupying and people are unable to go back. Although the Navy agreed in the Sampur area to shift, in Silabatura they refused. But as the Honourable Minister says, efforts are underway by the government. First, I think the approach is to try and persuade the military
Exactly.
that there is no armed conflict at present and they need to sort of, change their whole outlook to one of peace times and arrange their affairs.
First,
in that
we
way.
have to go for a short commercial break. I'm extremely sorry to interrupt
Oh, really?
you.
Okay.
So we're going for a short commercial break. We will be right back with the closing remarks of Minister D.M. Swaminathan and Parliamentarian M.A. Sumandran.
Presidential Commission of Inquiry to investigate and inquire into serious acts of fraud, corruption and abuse of power is now in effect. The Commission invites the public to submit complaints or information relating to persons who have held or continue to hold political office and public servants who held or continue to hold office between 10th January 2010 to 10th January 2015. Acts of corruption, fraud, criminal breach of trust, misappropriation of property, misuse of power, cheating and abuse which resulted in serious loss or damage to state assets and state revenue can be informed to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry to investigate acts of fraud and corruption. Block number 5, BMICH, Bauda Lokamawata, Colombo 7.
Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We are talking about 6 years following the end of the conflict. Where does the country stand today? And what is the present political climate in Sri Lanka? For closing remarks, I start off with M.A. Sumandran, representing the Tamil National Alliance. I have a question for you as well. Electoral reforms. Is the TNA fearful, or what is the position of the TNA?
Well, the TNA has no particular position in that we have looked at all the different proposals that have been made by so many different parties, and the TNA as a political party will continue to have the same kind of representation whatever change that is made. The reason being that we function like a main political party in the north and east, and in the rest of in the whole of the country a small political party, so we get the best of both worlds. But having said that, we are very interested in the electoral reform that is being proposed. We are particularly concerned that the reform should not shut out or reduce the representation that is given to smaller parties of political opinion or representing different communities, because in a democracy that is absolutely essential that you give voice and expression space for even the smallest unit in society. So we have articulated that position very clearly. We ourselves have not made any proposal, but whatever proposal that is put on the table, we have been actively involved in making our views known. We have broadly agreed on a mixed electoral system of FPP and PR, but the ratios and the manner of election and so on and so forth, there are various different models that are being proposed, and no one has we are not near a solution than when we started this process.
6 years following the end of the conflict, where does the country stand today?
Well, the country, with regard to, in reference to the end of the armed conflict, the country has now made a turn for the better. It was going downhill the last 6 years or 5.5 years, but I think beginning this year, a definite change has occurred, and the government has been remarkable in what it has been able to achieve. For instance, reduction of the executive powers of the president. For 20 odd years, governments with majority in parliament wouldn't do it, but here we have a minority government being able to do as much as it could. So we only hope that this change and this new broom effect will not diminish, but it will actually strengthen beyond the next general election. And the direction in which the country has been set from the beginning of this year will remain, and we will not go back.
Very quickly, parliamentarian, turn for the better. Isn't it too early to predict that?
No, the turn has occurred for the better. The only caution that I would administer is that we should remain in that course.
Minister D.M. Swaminathan, for your closing remarks, I throw a question to you. What is the way forward for a country like Sri Lanka? Are you satisfied with the commitment made by minority groups like the Tamil National Alliance to help you all rebuild the country?
Yes, certainly. We are working very closely with the Tamil National Alliance and with all the other parties that they want to work with us. We are in coordination with them. There is no issue whatsoever. Now, as far as the country concerned, we are at least having a democratic setup here. We are seeing a situation where democracy has blossomed in this country, where we did not have democracy. If you look at the 19th Amendment, we can see how the democratic setup came. For 2 days we had the debate. For more than till 11 o'clock in the night, the certain amendments were being discussed, and that shows the democracy of the country. When the 18th Amendment was brought forward, it was within a couple of hours, everyone raised his hand and the entire thing was passed out without any sort of proper debate. So therefore, what I am trying to say, that is one issue. The second issue is that the amendment has been brought in, as Mr. Sumantharan brought, the powers of the president has been reduced, and there are certain ways of even the powers of the prime ministers have been spelled out very clearly, the cabinet of ministers have been spelled out. There is also the other reasons to say that as Constitutional Council is there, which is a very important factor, which gives in all the powers as far as the commissions are concerned. So you can see the democracy has blossomed. And also we have given the media freedom to people. They can make any comments and criticisms. UNP has been also criticized in a number of issues. Our Prime Minister has been criticized throughout for no reason. A person who was a visionary and a fairly competent person as far as our party is concerned. A very honorable and a respectful man. So therefore we are given media freedom. There are no white vans. There is no abduction of anyone being taken away. So the entire democracy of the country has blossomed. And that is what the people of this country need. And also, don't forget that the cost of living has come down. We are bringing a lot of other factors to bring the cost of living down. The petrol prices have come down. The gas prices have come down. So there are a number of issues that have been brought forward by this government within the short period of time, where the entire society is uplifted, and that we can see that there is a progressiveness in this country.
Thank you very much, Minister D.M. Swaminathan, Minister of Resettlement and Reconstruction, and also M.S. Sumantharan, representing the Tamil National Alliance. He's also a parliamentarian. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you very much, Nadeem, Sonali, and Faraz. I'm very sorry to cut you short, Faraz, before, but next time you will get the opportunity to pose more questions. On the 8th of January this year, people elected a government with a bundle of hopes. Have they been able to fulfill these promises? Words have to be transformed into action. At the end of the day, it's the people's franchise that matter. They can choose and they can throw out. Thank you very much. This is Face the Nation.